Hi everybody, I'm going to show you how I do the self-leveling underlayment in here. I got a section that's about 1 inch lower in the corner than what the rest of it is, and I've already shot it beforehand. I'm going to show you the steps that I went through to find out what the elevations were and how far it needs to be filled up and how I'm going to set those elevations so that I can guarantee to come up with a level surface using self-leveling underlayment. And that is also a misnomer to a degree because it needs help to maintain that level property, and that's what I'm going to show you how I'm doing here. I'm Jack with House Masters Carpentry, and welcome to my channel. I've already set the points where I know the high spots are, but I set my laser up at a new level, so I got to really just confirm a mark on the stick what level is for the rest of the floor. So with that, I'm going to take that high mark and mark the laser level where it's at. And then what I've done before also is come across this whole floor to see that that laser is still hitting across this way here. And I've already gone back and forth to either side, and it's running accurately through this point right here. And it came over to here, so I know that the low spot is from here to there going this way. Now with that, I'm going to chalk a line so I'll have something as a reference to go by. And they're going to be putting an epoxy floor over top of all this concrete. So they're going to be buffing down the floor, but there's an old tile floor that was down here. And there's some highs and lows here where I need to actually feather out to zero. And with all that rough surface, it's going to make it difficult for me to feather out. And I'm going to take a grinder and just give it a fast little finish across the way to get that smoothed out. Actually, this looks pretty good through here. I see a little bit there. I got a little bit chatter going on that I got to get past, so I'm going to make some dust getting this thing dressed out better. Actually, I had half of a mind of bringing a fan with, but I kind of forgot that part. Oh well. Another thing that I've done is also lay out a grid of 2-foot squares out on this floor, starting 6 inches away from this wall, 6 inches away from that wall. There's no need to go tight to the wall because it will float out that far from a given spot. So I'm going to show you my marks, because what I've done also is, here's my mark that the concrete, the self-leveling is going to stop at. And so I have some marks here on the plate so that when I cover up the marks on the floor here, that they will still be visible, so I'll know where to find them at on the floor. Here and there, and like that and so forth. And it's a 2-foot square. I got them on that plate over here on the floor. There's a crosshair there, one in the corner. So I'm gonna be using 3/16 flathead tapcons or flathead concrete screws to put this down. So I'm going to drill all these holes, these crosshairs that I made, staying about approximately 2 foot away from the line that I have struck on the floor, and have it ground out flat, because there's no need to put them there because that's where it goes to zero at anyway. And I do have one here, so and drill them about 1 inch deeper than what you need. All right, there wasn't that many holes. I'm glad. All right, at this part of the game, before I set the screws, this should be pretty much ready to receive the primer, which is a 2-part mix of a primer that's offered with this particular product that I'm using, which is Ardex V1200, good for up to 2 inches of pour. I only need 1 inch thick, so we're within those recommended standards. It also recommends a primer over top of the floor of a 1-to-1 mix of water and primer placed on the floor with a brush, not with a fine brush at that, not a roller, nothing else, a brush. So I'm not going to do that until I set all the screws for elevation, so I'm done walking all over top of the floor. And then I'm going to leave it for a while to let it dry, and then come back and start mixing up the product and spreading it out using these screws that I put in the floor as a guideline. this, you can see I got the mark right there down to the concrete. And on top of the screw, I am still got to go down about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to give this thing about 1/4 of a turn. And I'm going to do one trick. Because every time you turn a screw, it's going to drop down about 1/8 of an inch. These threads here are about 1/8 of an inch apart. So each revolution brings it down about 1/8. So it's kind of hard to see how this thing spins. So with that, you can see that's one revolution, half revolution, and that way you can get your screws down exactly where you need them to be. Okay, we're good on our mark right there. So we're going to move on, and these are going to go deeper and deeper into the concrete until I have to resort to shorter screws to do the same job. And there's that one's got to go down about 1/16 also. And that was nice. Very nice. It's nice when it goes like that. And the trick is, you want to make sure the stick is actually plumb. You don't want it to go like that. You can see it throws the mark off a little bit. You don't want it to lean forward. It throws the mark off. So get it as plumb as you can. That's why I use a long stick, because it's easier to keep plumb by eye. I'm going to let that go down just another little skosh. I'm using my flag to see how my drill's turning. And that's very nice. And another 1/8 down. Now I'm getting close to my line that I don't want to use really long screws on. I have to step down a length of the screws. Because if I get these screws in too deep, they're not going to want to turn. They're going to wring the heads off, and I'll have to drill a new hole. So it's not a big deal. I know how to do that. Okay, about 1/4 low, so that's 2 turns on the flag. Okay, now this is 1 1/4 inch screw here, and I see it's about 1/4 of an inch too high. So that'll be 2 twists of the drill. And almost 2. All right, that's got the grid done. So now I'm going to go ahead and mix up the primer. Again, it's a 1-to-1 mix, 1 part primer to 1 part water. I'm going to mix up enough to throw down over top of this small area. Probably take about 1 quart to do, so I'm going to mix up so. And again, brush apply it. That's what they call for in the instructions. Got my graduated measuring cup here, and let's have at it. I don't know if it's supposed to be shaking, but I'm going to, just in case there's some solids at the bottom. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put 4 cups in this. All right, before I start priming, I'm going to vacuum it again one more time, because walking back and forth off the area and onto the area will take stuff from my feet that's out of that area and bring it into the area where I don't want it. It shouldn't be no real harm, but there's no reason to leave it there if I already know the stuff is there. It's just the way it goes. Also, because since I got all these screws now in the way, I'm going to use this type of a brush so I can go over top of the screws without it hitting them every time I turn around. And besides, it'll help agitate the surface a little bit and get that other dust. All right, well, the whole idea is to get this on the floor. So I'm going to pour it out and brush it around, but I'm not going to go too bonkers because it cannot leave puddles. Really important. What you'll see is that I've actually put down too much in that one spot because I can't thin it out without stepping into what I'm doing. It's not that it's a big deal, it's just that it's a sticky substance when it dries. So I'm going to pull it out so there's no puddles while I have room to reach and chase it down where it's only against the wall, because that's easy for me to reach to. That's easy. And then once I get all this thinned out enough, then I'll resume with the larger portion again. But right now I got to control my own self-inflicted problem, so to speak. Again, no puddling, very important. This stuff has to be dry, and if it's puddling, it's not going to dry in those places where it's puddled at. That's why I'm sweating this. And how I know is that been there, done that. Okay, now I'm going to hit a little bit more on the floor, but I'm going to do one more thing. I got some cords here that I don't want to wind up dangling in the floor. Nowhere near like what I did before. Now, my mark is through here, okay? Now I'm going to take this material, this primer, 1 foot over top of my mark is here, because I've found out that I've had to draw this stuff out really thin before, just to make sure that I'm not puddling up, welling up where the flow of the material's heading my way. Sometimes it's hard to pick up on that, and I learned to have this thing primered 1 foot out, because you can disperse a lot of material by feathering out to zero over a longer area. In this case, maybe a foot longer. So it's got to be there, because I've already seen the difference of priming, because I had this exact same thing happen before that I'm describing to you. I had the amount of material, and this was before I used screws, and the stuff was leveling itself to the degree that it does, but I had put too much in place and I couldn't take it back out. So I had to spread it out. It didn't take much room to do it, but it had to be done. So I feathered it out over top of a spot that I didn't primer. And you can see when that material dried, it was like a different night of day. It dried a different color, everything. So I build this insurance that I have some place to go nowadays should I need to do that. And all I need to do is just make a tight skim. I'm talking less than a 16th, so that's what it needs to be, because it makes a big difference over there when stuff is moving your way. See, now I'm dealing with the puddling again. But I'm going to now, at least now I can reach it easy enough. The main thing is going to well up around where the screws are, because there's little pock marks where the drill initially went in and blew out a bit of concrete. So there's a little well down there around each of these screws that you got to make sure you dip out. Oh crap, I think I got too much. Ugh. I'll have to sop some of this stuff up whether I like it or not. I don't have that much floor ready to prep. I mean, it's like it just splashed out uncontrollably that time. It's just like picking up paint. Wipe off the brush, off the edge of the can. I'm going to get it down to a manageable mess. And see, it's wanting to run to the low spot, so you can't let it do that. You got to make it behave itself. Okay, where's my chalk line at? Right there, good. So I'm well beyond my chalk line limit. So now I just got to make sure that this is going to do what it needs to do, but I got way too much still. I'm losing my handhold for soaking up stuff. Got to do it. I'm seeing puddles where I don't want to have them at. It ain't nothing that's not going to wash off, so that's done. Now it's going to set for a couple of hours to dry. A couple of hours has passed. Now the primer on the floor is dry. You can tell by its color, you'll see that it's actually got a nice clear color to it. There's no cloudy looking spaces to it. Usually it takes about a half of an hour, but I had some other things I needed to do, so it wound up being a couple hours since I was gone. There's a way to test it. They say if you put water on it and then water turns up cloudy, it says it's not dried yet. So anyway, I can see this from prior experience that this is dry. I'm seeing one spot over at the edge where it doesn't matter. There's no consequence where it is still wet, but it's also at the edge. Again, doesn't matter because nobody's ever going to walk there and cabinets are going over there. That was a driving force behind putting the self-leveling down, because the toe space on the cabinets would look really bad if based on, well, with the floor being as ugly as it was. Anyway, so what we have here now is I have this bucket here that's ready to go. That's usually what's rented with the material that I'm using here, which is the V1200, Ardex V1200, which is good for up to a 2-inch pour. The other versions of Ardex are not suitable for anything that thick, so 1 inch that is. So I'm using this because it gets me up to 2 inches of pour. There's ways to get around the thicker solutions with other products, but that's adding gravel, aggregate, and stuff like that, which means it's a 2-step process also. This does it in 1 step. This also allows 2 bags being mixed at one time, 5 quarts per bag. So I have 10 quarts of water in this already. I have another bucket of 10 quarts of water for the second batch, and I'm expecting it to take 4 bags. That's where my water's set up for. And just in case it goes into a 5th bag, I have a container with water enough for 1 bag, 5 quarts, to where I can dump that in there. And I'm just going to use this same mix and same bucket. I'm not going to rinse it out between because it's got to move fast. This material has a 10-minute flow time. You got to be mindful of that because it's not going to wind up self-leveling. If you try to heap it up after a while, it's just going to pile up into a mound in the center. So you really got to keep it moving. So once I start this process, I got to hit it to where water's ready to go, bags are ready to go. So I'm going to open up my bags, all of them that I expect to use. 4 of them at least. I'll open up the 5th one should I need to. But I got to hit these 2 pours like done, because it's going to take me at least 5 minutes to mix the second batch. And then another few more minutes to get it out, because and I'm going to let you know that that deeper pour right there, that I'm doing it where it's 1 inch thick, it's going to be trying to run this way. So while I'm making the other batch, it's coming this way. So I got to pour the other batch on it to push it back that way again. Now I got tools to help me with also, and I'll give you a little rundown on that. This may look like some gold rhubarb type stuff, but on a small pour like this is going to come in handy. You use a garden rake otherwise to move this stuff, and Ardex has their own special tools that they want you to use too, but it's pretty much a garden rake will do what you need to move it the way you need to. You need to help the stuff. You don't want to just have a solid end of something like this that's going to move material en masse. You want to move it gently with this. So this is a comb. This is actually for plasterers. It's a tool for plasterers that do plaster finishing with old school stuff. But this will help me rake the material, and you see it being used. And this right here, the only reason why I'm using that, I could have been a putty knife, but it would have me searching for those screws a lot. I'm just wanting to make sure that I can hit the top of the screws with this. And I have them marked, but I just want to touch it and make sure that the screws are showing themselves. And that's the whole purpose of this right here. This is the move. This is to locate the screws to get my depth right. All right, I'm going to open the bags up and get them ready. All right, it's showtime. I shouldn't need these, but you just never know. Do not drop all your dry mix in all the way. It's supposed to be mixed gradually. You can get away with it with one bag, but not two. I tell you what, I'm glad I got more than 5 bags. Okay, there's that screw. There's that one. Okay. I probably could have made one more bag and been done with it. This is all poured, everything's flowed very well in place. I can see the screw heads just barely picking up because of the concrete that's on top of the screw heads. Once that concrete's flaked off, you'll find that the screws are actually flush with the concrete. I've seen this before, works out really nice that way. And even if it's a little bit, I'm talking like 30 seconds of an inch now compared to a concrete floor that was an inch out. Whoa. Anyway, I'm gonna show you what I have here. You remember I said I was gonna run this primer out an extra foot. Well, I'll tell you what, I took up to about 6 inches of that extra foot of primer, and I'm glad I did, because I just had too much out there and I had to let it level out a little bit more. But the big trick is that it flowed out towards now flat, because if I had not feathered this out far enough, you would see this self-leveling trying to ease up over top of this a little bit, saying it was still trying to come this way even more. So it caught all that in good time. So it's all making its transition down to 0 here really nicely. They should have no issues putting the floor over top of this that they're planning on doing, which actually is an epoxy finish. So for what's worth, all the rest of this floor is going to get a refinishing over top of it too to prepare it for the epoxy. But this right here needed to be done for the cabinets. So that's got this wrapped up, guys. So hopefully if you picked up a thing or two on it, this turned out well for being a one-man deal. I don't recommend somebody doing this for the first time, doing it as a one-man crew. Don't do it. It's a lot to keep track of. While you were watching this setup in the camera, I was outside cleaning up the tools so that nothing hardened up on those. And there's always something going on until I can come back here and start talking to you again. If this is something that you learned something from, hit that like and subscribe button. And until next time, guys, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.